Chapter 71 Uninvited Guest. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Saturday morning, Lex was at his desk, deep in work. Being the manager of the small town's chemical plant kept him busy. Mr. Luthor, the old butler, dressed impeccably, knocked and entered after being told to come in. There's a woman outside, calling herself Amanda Waller, who wants to see you. She says it's about the Luthor plant. Amanda? Lex frowned, sitting up straighter. As someone in free America's upper crust, Lex knew the name Amanda Waller. The fat mad dog, the high UPS loyal lapdog, the government's black glove, these were just a few of the labels pinned on Amanda. Simple, obedient, and easy to manipulate were why she had risen so high. Maybe a little black girl magic thrown in too, but without serious power, you don't even get to be a dog for those guys. Amanda was that kind of person. Besides being loyal to her handlers, she was also a real pit bull, and now, this tough cookie had come to town, making Lex nervous. Usually, if you wanted someone to disappear, you could just pay some money and hire a hitman, but that didn't work with politicians. You can't just kick someone's dog without expecting a fight, and Amanda's handlers were powerful. Taking her out would start a war. Lex waved his hand for the butler to leave. Soon after, Victoria, in a nightgown, walked into the study with a sly smile. She'd been eavesdropping, and it seemed her ex had secrets. Trouble, huh? Need any help? Lex smiled. Actually, honey, if you could get Gino down here. Victoria sneered inwardly, but said sweetly, something like that? I could handle it. No need to bother Gino, right? Victoria was still stewing over Gino's insults from the night before. She saw her chance to poison Lex's ear. I know, but get him anyway. Lex smiled, cutting her off. A smart woman knows not to push it. She smiled, winked, and sashayed toward her brother-in-law's room. As Victoria left, Lex's smile vanished. Quick as a light switch, he stared coldly at her back, tapped his fingers on the table, and muttered, "Idiot." He knew what she was up to, but like Gino guessed, Lex didn't mind playing with this dumb woman, just a little fun while he built his empire. Still, her bad-mouthing Gino pissed him off. Lex. Gino rarely slept in, but his cheap brother had dragged him out of bed. Gino, playing with a piece of kryptonite, came downstairs and complained, "Why so early?" "Gino, we've got a problem." Lex rested his chin on his hands. "Amanda Waller's in town, and she's sniffing around." Gino shrugged, sat opposite Lex, and glanced at the door, where he could see a black skirt. He lowered his voice. "You worried about what we've got stashed at the plant?" "Exactly." Lex pursed his lips. "She doesn't care about money. It's power she wants. If she digs too deep, our plans for this place are screwed, and the White House vultures will tear it apart." "No way. Nobody takes what's ours." Gino cut him off, cradling his face and looking at Lex with amusement. He poked Lex's chest. "Come on, Lex. What do you want me to do?" He didn't believe Lex was helpless. He probably had a dozen solutions the second he heard Amanda was coming. Lex was silent, and a cold glint flashed in his dark green eyes. "Let's just see what she does. If she starts digging." He smiled, a strange, cruel smile. "Then, I'll send her a little necktie party." Inside a black Lincoln sedan, Amanda smelled the air freshener and stared at the old castle through the window. As a White House lapdog, Amanda knew how important the Luthor family was to the United States. There's an unspoken rule between corporations and politicians: they restrain, cooperate, and fight each other. But for the heir to such an empire to live in some backwater town, considering the weird murders, Amanda felt like she was wading through fog. She licked her lips like a hungry toad. The more mysterious this was, the more she wanted to figure it out. What secret was the Luthor family hiding? She couldn't wait to dig. She was good at that. Politicians were filthy, inside and out. Tap, tap. Someone knocked on the window. The driver rolled it down. The Luthor family's white-haired butler, in his suit and tie, said, "Ms. Waller, the Luthor family welcomes you." "Okay." Amanda smiled, but her smile had a hint of malice. She composed herself, heaved herself out of the car, and followed the butler into the castle. In the hall, maids had prepared tea. The Luthors had come to America from England, and they still drank tea to this day. Looking at the gold forks and spoons, Amanda sneered. These fancy vampires were rich. She struggled to sit on the plush sofa. Her weight made it groan, but it held. The fat black woman took a sip of tea. 2 young men walked in. One was bald, serious, and calm. The other was blonde, ordinary-looking, but with an air of indifference. "Ms. Waller, welcome," Lex said, like a pro, with a bright smile, but the blonde guy just plopped down on the sofa, not even looking at Amanda. "Mr. Luthor." Amanda looked away and shook Lex's hand. "Nice to meet you." Chapter 72 Who is the Prey? You are listening at novelfull.audio. In the hall, Amanda stared at Lex, her brown eyes intense. "Thanks to the president, I recently put together the National Special Incident Response Team. We're investigating all the weird stuff happening across the country. And I've noticed Smallville has hundreds of mysterious deaths every year. Color me curious." Amanda clasped her hands, leaning forward slightly to add pressure. "I want to check out the Luthor family. You're a leading company around here, maybe you've got some inside info." Lex didn't answer Amanda, instead looking at Keno. They exchanged a look, clearly having come to a decision. "Actually, Ms. Amanda," Lex said with a smile, "we have noticed some anomalies in town. That's why we set up a tech lab at our factory. And we've been researching some pretty interesting things." Hearing Lex's confession, Amanda's eyes widened, sparkling with excitement. She licked her lips, like she was eyeing a Thanksgiving feast. She hadn't expected this to go so smoothly. Anything the Luthors were investing in had to be groundbreaking. She could practically taste the power and prestige. "So," Amanda said patiently, her eyes gleaming, "can you take me there? I'd like to see it. If it's valuable." Amanda began to dangle a carrot in front of Lex. "I'll take it straight to the White House and get you some federal funding." Lex looked ecstatic, his face alight with excitement. "Really? Ms. Amanda, my research is incredibly expensive. And my father won't give me a dime." "Of course. My word is my bond." Amanda's smile widened. She couldn't believe how easily she was playing Lex. This just confirmed her low opinion of him. The Luthors? Overrated. She was already planning her next move: expose the Luthor factory's illegal experiments, seize the facility, and claim Lex's research as her own. "Then what are we waiting for?" Lex jumped up, practically dragging Amanda toward the lab for that sweet investment. Amanda smiled and stood, grabbing her bag from the sofa. She glanced at Keno, still sitting motionless. "Isn't this one coming along?" "Oh, he's deaf." "Don't mind him," Lex said enthusiastically. "Come on, Ms. Amanda, I can't wait to show you what we've got." Amanda nodded, but not before giving Lex's deaf brother one last, lingering look. But the sofa was empty. Luthor Chemical Plant, first sublevel. The elevator doors opened, revealing a massive, imposing metal door. Amanda's 2 suit-clad bodyguards tensed, hands hovering over their holsters, ready for anything. So the Luthor group does know the town's secrets, Amanda thought, smirking as Lex punched in the access code. Beep! The door slowly began to rise. Inside, countless experimental canisters were arranged in neat rows. Strange creatures floated in the jars. "What the hell is that?" The bodyguard stared in shock at a huge iron cage in the center of the lab. Imprisoned inside was a monstrous bat creature. Noticing the intruders, it bared its fangs and roared. "Who?" Looking at the bizarre and terrifying creature, Amanda's breathing quickened. So this was it. This was why Smallville was so damn weird. The answers were all in this lab. "What is that, exactly?" Trying to sound nonchalant, Amanda asked Lex. "That's a vampire that absorbs human body fat," Lex explained. "We're studying her." Amanda stared up at the monster, her brow furrowed. "Miss Amanda?" Lex's voice broke her train of thought. "About that investment." "Oh, right, investment." Amanda's smile turned cold. She glanced at her bodyguards. They moved, flanking Lex. Lex Luthor. Amanda said, her face hardening. The Luthor group has endangered the town's residents with your illegal research. I'm shutting you down. Amanda had decided she was done waiting, shut down the lab, report her findings, and collect her reward. What? You can't do this. Lex sputtered. You said you'd invest. Ha. Amanda laughed, cutting him off. Mr. Lex, this should be a lesson, never trust a politician. Amanda said confidently, you're just a pawn. You. Lex began to protest. Okay, enough playing around, Lex. I've got a test on Monday. A lazy voice drawled from behind Amanda. What? The bodyguards looked like they'd seen a ghost, all three of them whirled around, leaning against the cold wall. A familiar blond young man stared back at them with bored eyes. Next to him, Bizarro squatted like a zombie, his eyes wide, trying to look menacing. You're not mute. A bodyguard blurted out what Amanda was thinking. Just a bad joke, Lex's idea. Alright, what do you want? Amanda wasn't an idiot. She knew she'd walked into a trap. She stepped forward, glaring at Keno. What do we want? Keno smiled, walking towards them, his tone light. From the moment you arrived in town, you were on the Luthor family's radar. Keno sounded almost regretful. Lex just wanted to see what you'd do. And you didn't disappoint. You're ambitious. You wanted to uncover the town's secrets. You even tried to squeeze information out of Lex. Keno was getting closer. Amanda clenched her fists, her face grim. Back off, the bodyguards reacted, raising their pistols and pointing them at Keno's head, but the young man kept walking, unfazed. Fire, the bodyguard didn't hesitate. He pulled the trigger. Bang, the bullet flew from the barrel, a fiery spark trailing behind it as it spun toward Keno. Time seemed to slow. Keno casually raised his palm. Bang, the bullet slammed into his open hand, as if hitting solid steel. The round warhead flattened under the force of impact. Tink. The mangled bullet fell to the floor. Keno smiled at their stunned faces. Now, who's the prey? Chapter 73 Farewell, Superman Season 1 completed or more updates. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Underground base. Keno walked slowly toward them. No way, he's not afraid of bullets. The bodyguard rubbed his eyes, not believing what he saw, a high school kid stopping live rounds with his bare hand. The twisted bullet casings on the ground proved it wasn't a trick, this guy just didn't believe it. Bang bang bang, more shots rang out. They didn't even see the kid move. He just flicked his hand, and the bullets clattered to the ground. Amanda stared, wide-eyed with fear, trying to figure out how Keno was doing it. Phew. Keno blew the dust off his palms and stood in front of the bodyguards. He grinned. Surprised, that snapped the bodyguards out of their stupor. They charged, fists flying. Ugh, boring. Keno shook his head. In a flash, he grabbed them by the necks and slammed their heads together. Smack, like watermelons exploding, brain matter splattered onto Amanda's face. Ah! She screamed like a stuck pig. Shut it. Keno glanced at her. She clamped her mouth shut, biting her lip, terrified to make a sound. He tossed the headless corpses aside, looked at the blood on his hands, and shook it off. A few drops arced through the air, landing on Amanda's lips. The metallic tang of blood hung in the air. Amanda's pupils dilated, and she stared blankly. She was frozen. She'd always considered herself tough, but seeing this, everything changed. A cold knot of fear tightened in her gut, reminding her of her deadbeat dad who'd skipped out when she was a kid. Fear gnawed at her, but the instinct to survive screamed at her to do something. What could she do? Fight back. The two bodies on the ground were the answer to that. Beg? Plead with a teenage punk? She was a mess of conflicting thoughts. Then she saw a pair of blood-stained sneakers in front of her. Her pride crumbled. Don't kill me, the scream tore from her throat. Her knees buckled. and she went down hard. I'm a member of the president's staff, a congressional aide, the head of the paranormal investigation team. You can't kill me. She stammered, she even played the Luthor family card. If I die, the White House will send someone to investigate. This town will be crawling with outsiders. The sneakers stopped moving, then. Thump, a sneaker slammed down on her head, grinding her face into the floor. Humiliation surged through her, but she heard the blonde kid's voice. Interesting, Senator Amanda. You've got a point. So, what do you think I should do? She swallowed her pride, unclenched her fists, and whispered, if you let me live, I'll serve the Luthor family. Ha ha ha. Laughter rang out above her. Gino looked down at the overweight black woman under his foot, shook his head, and said, but Ms. Amanda, you just said you can't trust politicians. Now you expect me to let you go? I don't trust you. Gino leaned closer. But I'm a nice guy. I'm willing to give you a chance. It just comes with a small price. He pinched his fingers together and grinned, like a devil making a deal. He clapped his hands. Bizarro, grinning stupidly, brought over a syringe. Gino flicked the needle and smiled. Allow me to introduce you. A nanobomb. It was the same black Lincoln. Amanda stared out the window at the Luthor chemical plant, her eyes burning with malice. She rubbed her thick neck, and hatred flashed in her eyes. Then she tapped on the seat and told the driver to go. Ms. Amanda. The driver pulled away from the factory smoothly. He glanced at her in the rearview mirror. How's the investigation going? Amanda stared straight ahead. Nothing. Everything's normal in this town. Monday. Ring. The bell rang, and the students dropped their papers, cheering and racing out of the classroom. The final exam was over. Hello, summer vacation. Gino and Chloe walked side by side. Since Gino broke things off with Clark, Chloe and Peter had found new friends. Now it was Gino and Chloe, Clark and Peter. In the hall, Chloe snuck glances at Gino. She hesitated, then asked, so, what are you doing this summer? Me? Gino shrugged. I don't know. Probably sticking around town. His phone rang. He glanced at the number and answered. What's up? You're on vacation now, right? Lionel's voice came over the line. Your mother wants to visit your grandfather in Gotham. She wants you to go with her. Gino paused. Okay. He hated his father, but he loved his mother. Whoa, didn't mean to eavesdrop, but you're going to Gotham for the summer? Chloe shuddered. Just hearing the word Gotham gives me the creeps. What was Gotham? Sin City, Devil's Land, anything chaotic or evil. That was Gotham City. It was a hellhole, everyone agreed. Yeah, Gotham. My mother wants to see my grandfather. Gino hung up. He loved his mother, and he wasn't going to let her go to that place alone. Chloe sighed. Oh, I was going to invite you to the bonfire party next week. Guess not. There'll be other times, Chloe. Gino smiled, ruffled her hair, and said, see you in the fall. Chloe looked down, but brightened and said, okay, see you in the fall. Gotham tomorrow. Long live my beloved Gotham. Chapter 74 Mother. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Under a rich, dark sky, skyscrapers blazed with a million neon lights. These lights twisted and twinkled, painting a vibrant picture against the night. A sleek, expensive black car pulled up slowly to a mansion, its paint and lines screaming money. Long, elegant legs emerged onto the tiled walkway. Young man in a black suit adjusted his tie, a hint of sadness in his eyes as he looked up. In the darkness, a gold-plated plaque gleamed on the iron gate. Swaymore Asylum. Swaymore Asylum was a prestigious institution with a long history. It had been around since Gotham's early days, but business was slow back then because, well, there just weren't that many crazy people. But as the city boomed and life sped up, the number of crazies exploded. Swaymore, once open to everyone, successfully rebranded itself, catering exclusively to the elite. After the security guard confirmed his ID, the iron gates swung open, and Gino entered the sprawling grounds. Blue flowers lined the driveway, he plucked a few casually and headed into the mansion. Guards stood watch in the grand hall, patients in hospital gowns were lost in their own worlds. Some paced frantically in circles, heads down, others stood on tables and chairs, belting out off-key tunes. Gino weaved through them, heading for the second floor. As he climbed the wooden stairs, a soft melody drifted through the hallway. It was slow and soothing, like a mother singing a lullaby. Gino's expression clouded as he saw a blonde woman leaning against a locked window. It was his mother, Letitia Elliott. 4 years ago, she'd finally snapped from Lionel's constant cheating and fighting. Sheltered her whole life, she tried to end it all. She'd jumped from the 4th floor of their house, and Gino had caught her. But the fall had damaged her head, and that was the beginning of her illness. The incident was like a thorn in his heart, and the main reason why he and Lionel were always at odds. Life wasn't easy for anyone, not even someone with as much potential as Gino. After Letitia's jump, he'd found a quiet, deserted spot and cried for a long time. Now, he looked at his mother. She touched the cold glass, as if trying to pick the flowers outside. In her other hand, she clutched 2 teddy bears. Even in the oversized hospital gown, she looked frail. Dark circles under her eyes showed she wasn't sleeping well. A peaceful smile played on her lips. When she heard his footsteps, she turned, seeing the handsome young man approaching. Her smile vanished, replaced by a dark look. She shrieked and charged at him. "Go away! Get out!" That she waved her hands, trying to shoo him away. "This is my castle. No Lionel allowed." "Mom!" Gino grabbed her wrist, looking into her blue eyes, the same shade as his. "It's me, Gino. I came to see you." She tilted her head, glancing at the dolls in her hands, confusion clouding her gaze. "But, my 2 babies are with me." She pulled a piece of candy from her pocket and stuffed it into the golden bear, stroking its head gently. "Here's your favorite, Gino." Gino watched silently and sighed. Why did that bald bear look so pathetic? "Okay." He gave up on trying to make her recognize him. In the world of the mentally ill, sometimes you just had to play along to get anywhere. He tried a different approach. "I'm Mr. Lauren Elliott's driver. I'm here to take you back to Gotham." The woman's fear melted away, replaced by childlike excitement. "Dad sent you to get me?" "That's right." Gino pulled a crumpled blue flower from his pocket and handed it to her with a smile. "Look, a Gotham flower. Don't you always like the flowers at Elliott Manor?" He gestured toward the flower bed outside. He'd spent a fortune transplanting those Gotham flowers to the asylum, just to make her happy. Letitia reached for the flower, her eyes wide. She smiled at Gino. "Then let's go." She skipped toward the stairs. "Home." "Yes." Gino followed her calmly. "Let's go home." Gotham, a cold, steel jungle, supporting everyone within. The ever-present sound of gunfire seemed to disturb the cold moon, casting a dark, hazy light across the city. Countless chimneys spewed gray smoke into the air, giving everything a pungent, sooty smell. This was Gotham. Chaos, filth, evil, any terrible, unfortunate, angry, or sad adjective could be found in this city. It was a roaring beast in the night, devouring the souls of its citizens. "Damn weather," a brown-haired man in a suit muttered outside Gotham Airport. He checked his watch, then scanned the exit. The wait wasn't long, but it felt like an eternity. Finally, a woman in a light blue dress burst out of the terminal, followed by a blonde young man. No one paid Letitia's exuberance any attention. This was Gotham, after all. A few lunatics running around were normal. "Letitia," thought the brown-haired man called to the woman. "Over here." "Thomas?" She tilted her head, studying him. "It's me, Letitia." He smiled, happy to see his sister. "Uncle Thomas." Gino followed with the suitcase. Thomas glanced at Gino and sighed. "Keno, welcome to Gotham. And don't forget to tell me all about how I can curse Lionel." Gino shrugged. "I will, but I doubt he'll care." The 3 of them piled into Thomas's car. Letitia, like a curious child, pressed her face against the window, taking in the sights. In the front seat, Thomas chatted with Gino. "I'm going to a gala tomorrow night. I want you to come." I want you to meet a good friend. Thomas doted on his sister's son. He wanted to introduce him to his contacts. Gino nodded. I will, Uncle. Chapter 75 The Origin of Gotham. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Elliott Manor. Late at night, the old mansion sat on a huge piece of land in Gotham City's East End. A few crows were perched in the locust trees by the gate. A black car pulled up slowly, startling the birds. They took off with a flap of wings, their croaks adding an eerie touch to the silent manor. We're here, Thomas said, stopping the car. He stared at the quaint manor, a complicated look on his face. Honestly, I haven't been back much since I grew up. He watched Letitia excitedly dash into the manor, then put his hands on his hips and smiled. But hey, this is a good place for her to relax. Gino didn't respond, just kept his eyes on the manor. 2 stone owl statues flanked the iron gate. He remembered the ruby eyes on the statues from when he visited his grandfather Lauren as a kid. Now, they were gone, which just showed how chaotic Gotham was becoming. Thomas, thinking Gino was worried about Letitia, sighed and clapped him on the shoulder. Don't sweat it. I know a lot of good psychiatrists in this city. I'm sure we can find someone to help her. They walked towards the manor, talking about Letitia's condition. White-haired old man greeted them, trembling and leaning heavily on a cane. He bowed with difficulty. Heir of the Elliott family, welcome. The master is waiting for you inside. The old man's gaze lingered on Gino, as if the owner of the manor was only interested in seeing him. Thomas looked a little awkward. He shook his head. Letitia and I will wait outside. Gino frowned, remembering Lauren. He was a tyrannical old man who always had a scowl and a quick temper. Gino didn't know him well. He'd spent his childhood playing with Thomas at the manor. Lead the way, Gino said after a moment, deciding to face his estranged grandfather. He pushed open the heavy wooden door. An expensive chandelier hung from the living room ceiling, covered in dust. The messy knives, forks, and leftover food on the dining table hinted at the Elliott family's faded glory. Gino saw an old man in purple pajamas lying on the sofa, looking sick. His skin was wrinkled and spotted, his hair was thin, saliva dripped from the corners of his mouth, and his eyes were closed. He looked close to death. Master Lauren, Master Gino is here. The old butler's voice woke Lauren. The old man slowly opened his cloudy eyes and studied Gino. The butler slipped away. Come closer, Lauren told Gino. Gino took a couple of steps. He could smell the rotting scent coming from Lauren's body. Time was cruel, silently stealing a person's life. Gino stopped. Suddenly, Lauren reached out and grabbed Gino's wrist. His eyes were filled with envy as he mumbled, "It's great to be young." What do you want? Gino asked, pulling his hand away. He didn't know what the old man had eaten for lunch, but something sticky had gotten on his wrist, so Gino took out a tissue and wiped it off. Hey! Lauren chuckled at Gino's reaction. Don't be like that. I called you here to give you a gift. Open the cabinet over there. I have a little something prepared for you. Gino raised an eyebrow and looked towards the cabinet. His eyes scanned the wooden cabinet. It gradually became transparent, and he saw a small silver box and a plain white bird-shaped mask. He focused on the silver box. Gino's gaze penetrated the metal. Inside was a pool of silvery white liquid, like molten silver, but what really surprised Gino was the liquid's Milky Way-like shimmer. What is this? He was definitely interested in the glowing liquid. The young man opened the cabinet and took out the box. Click. As the lid came off, a pool of flowing silver came into view. Sniff, sniff. Gino sniffed, but there was no smell. Tasteless, he muttered, adding another label to the mysterious liquid. Well? Lauren coughed, interrupting Gino's thoughts. Isn't it beautiful? Magical? What is this? Gino really had no idea. Lauren stared at the box in Gino's hand. It's called amber gold. A metal that can prolong life and give you a little healing boost. Metal? Gino raised an eyebrow. He reached out and touched the liquid, and it felt cold, like spring water. Lauren grinned, showing his yellow teeth. Yep. It's how I made it to 95. Gino was curious. So, where did you get it? How did I get it? Gino's words seemed to anger Lauren. He stood up, trembling, his voice hoarse. It belongs to our Elliot family. Enraged, the old man limped to the wall where the curtains were drawn. He grabbed the heavy black curtain and yanked it open. Look at these paintings. Gino looked at the wall. Several oil paintings hung there. The first painting showed 4 young people and their families on a sailboat. They looked determined and were gazing out to sea, as if they were headed toward something. Ahem. Lauren coughed and pointed at the painting. This is the origin of Gotham City. 4 ambitious young people sailed across the ocean to Gotham, which was nothing but wilderness back then. The old man's eyes flashed with memories. The Wayne family, the Elliot family, the Kane family, the Cobot family. 4 founders who built Gotham City. Gino's eyes moved to the next painting. This one looked strange. The frame was split in 2. The top half showed a city. Above it, a young man looked down with his arms crossed. The bottom half showed a complex network of pipes, with a hall hidden inside. Chairs were placed in the hall, and a figure shrouded in darkness sat with his chin resting on his hands, as if he were talking to companions. Lauren's voice echoed in his ears. After founding Gotham, the Wayne family loved this city. They wanted it to develop freely, so everyone could get an education and have enough to eat. They wanted a city without hunger or poverty. But our ancestor Elliot didn't agree. He created an organization called the Court of Owls, recruited powerful locals, and decided that the city's development should be controlled by families like theirs. Listening to Lauren, Gino's face contorted. Man, did the Elliots sound like the bad guys. Chapter 76 Everything Will Be Mine, more updates. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Lauren's still going on about the origins of Gotham City. He was telling Keno how the Court of Owls, under the Elliot family's control, grew into this massive, looming presence over Gotham. Lauren closed his eyes, looking confused, and muttered, "Beware the Court of Owls, always watching." A glimpse of Gotham from the shadows, hidden in attics behind low walls. They're with me when I'm home, when I lie down, they're in my bed. Don't speak their name, or their claws will come for you. Lauren opened his eyes, looked at Gino, who seemed bored, and said, "That Gotham nursery rhyme isn't just a story. The Court of Owls has more wealth and power than you can imagine. They control Gotham's deadliest assassins, ready to take out anyone who stands in their way." So? Gino said, ignoring Lauren's praise and focusing on the last image. It showed a hunched figure slipping out of a dark hall. The young man stared at Lauren with his blue eyes and asked, "Was the Elliot family kicked out of the Court of Owls?" Lauren went silent. His face flushed as he argued, "I left voluntarily." Hearing that, Gino understood. A smile played on the boy's lips. He looked at Lauren. "So, you messed up and they booted you out, huh?" Lauren didn't answer, but Gino circled him, saying, "Let me guess. Why tell me about Amber Gold? You want me to help you achieve your dream and get back into the Court of Owls, right?" Lauren wasn't angry that Gino had seen through him. The old man, who'd been worked up a moment before, regained his composure. He sank back onto the sofa, looking at Gino. "You remind me of myself when I was young. I see the ambition in your eyes, the hunger for more. And the Elliot name can help you get it." Lauren laid out his plan. "I'd hoped Thomas would carry on my wishes, but he just wanted to be a doctor. A useless doctor. So you came to me?" Gino scoffed. "Listen." Lauren held up a hand to silence Gino, continuing, "I made a mistake within the Court of Owls and was expelled. But they offered me a chance, a way for my heir to join the court." Lauren stood up again and retrieved the white owl mask from the cabinet. He placed it in Gino's hand. "Take it. Half of your blood is Gotham's. They won't reject you. You can join their ranks and have the city's support. The Claw assassins will obey you, and Amber Gold will sustain you." Gino took the mask. It was thin and light, only revealing the eyes and nostrils. He toyed with it, then turned to Lauren, chuckling, "They kicked you out with your tail between your legs, but now they're offering me a spot. You know what that looks like to me? It's like throwing a dog a bone after kicking him out of the house. Gino's voice grew louder as he slowly straightened, his tall frame radiating power. The Court of Owls belongs to the Elliot family. His voice dropped, and he pinned Lauren with his blue eyes, and now you want me to crawl back to those thieves on my hands and knees for a handout? Sorry, I don't take charity. Gino tightened his grip on the mask. The fragile white mask shattered, and ceramic shards rained onto the floor. No! Lauren shrieked. He threw himself onto the carpet, a cloud of dust rising around him. The old man trembled, gathering the fragments. He looked up at Gino, enraged. Look what you've done. You ruined your only chance. No! Gino's voice boomed, drowning out Lauren. The old man was startled by the intense blue light in Gino's eyes, brighter than the amber gold in the box. A cold mist emanated from the young man's eyes, frosting the surrounding furniture. He heard his grandson sneer, I'll get what I want myself. Gino stared at the oil paintings on the wall, almost talking to himself. Amber gold will be mine. The Claw assassins will be mine, too. The Court of Owls will be mine. And their secrets will be mine. Gino cracked his neck, a sharp sound. Whatever I want, I'll take it. He couldn't understand why he should beg for scraps when he could just take what he wanted. If something's worth having and it's in the hands of a villain, take it. That's Gino's way. He wasn't about to be nice to a bunch of guys who deserved to be hanging from lampposts. Besides, the Court of Owls was founded by his mother's ancestors. Taking it back was just returning it to its rightful owners. Lauren, seeing the blue fire in Gino's eyes and the overwhelming aura, finally realized he'd never truly known his grandson. The young man before him was more mysterious and terrifying than he'd imagined. The killing intent in Gino reminded him of the court's assassins. Gino ignored Lauren's state. He leaned down, whispering in the old man's ear, now tell me, where's their hideout? Gino's words snapped Lauren back to reality. He pursed his lips, took a deep breath, and said, I don't know. Gino frowned. You really don't know? The old man said confidently, of course not. The Court of Owls is extremely cautious. They have hundreds of strongholds throughout Gotham's underground passages. And they change locations frequently. Gino listened, silently complaining. These rich guys really had too much time on their hands. Why so many hideouts? Were they afraid of being strung up from a lamppost someday? Lauren sighed, if you'd kept the mask, you could have put it on and walked around Gotham. They would have found you. But now, you've ruined everything. You mean the mask? Gino glanced at the fragments on the floor. Then, he looked at Lauren, a new idea forming. The young man pointed to the shattered mask. Then why not put it back together? No, seeing a broken mask will only alarm them and make them hide deeper. Really? Gino said thoughtfully, so the Court of Owls was very cautious. A smirk played on the young man's lips. If they don't want to be found, then I'll lure them out. Do you know what the Claw assassins look like? Chapter 77 The Pain of Red Blood. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Gino got the Claw assassin's outfit from Lauren, and at his request, she pointed him to some of the best tailors in the city. Late night in Gotham, Keno strolled down the street. The red light district buzzed with activity. Hookers, strung-out junkies, and drunks passed out in the gutter. Laughter mixed with the roars of frustrated gamblers created a chaotic symphony unique to this city of sin. The air hung thick with a cocktail of pungent odors and vomit, but the pleasure-seekers were used to it. Each wore a smile, but God could see the emptiness in their eyes. Keno bought a cheap bat mask from a street vendor and slipped it on. Newspaper, mister. Just $1. A dirty-faced kid blocked Keno's path. Gotham kids were sharp. This one sized up Keno's suit and watch, his smooth skin. Young, rich, and clean-cut, Gino tossed him a coin. The kid fumbled it, then shoved a fresh newspaper into Gino's hands. Gino read as he walked. The headline screamed from the front page, Bruce Wayne returns to Gotham. Gino had overheard the news in nearby bars. One guy had said, figures, Gotham's richest man's gotta have something wrong with his head. What's he coming back to this shithole for? Piss on his dead parents' graves. The tavern erupted in laughter, echoing into the street. Keno continued on, until a skinny girl stopped him. Hey there, mister, wanna have some fun? That she wore an oversized brown coat and flashed the lace underneath. Nah, you're too ugly. Geno's face was cold. Screw you. She flipped him off and moved on to the next mark. Hey, mister, wanna have some fun? Geno watched the exchange. He was about to leave when a beefy guy in a white suit, a real flashy type, charged from around the corner. Fark, the guy, clearly her pimp, grabbed the girl's wrist roughly. Check this dude out, he's dressed like a cop. Geno glanced at the man the pimp had stopped, felt hat, plain jeans, brown jacket. Weird getup for summer. I'm not a cop, the man said quietly, but suddenly, a bunch of thugs with weapons surrounded him. This guy's in trouble, Geno muttered. He'd reached his destination, a tailor shop. Keno entered, took off the mask, and told the owner what he needed. After hearing the proposition, the shop owner was enthusiastic. Jingle, Geno stepped back onto the street. The fight was still going on. The young man was in the middle of the road, fists flying, handling himself well. Several thugs lay groaning on the ground. The street girl looked stunned. Her pimp hadn't expected this cop to be so capable. Seeing the man coming at him, the pimp shoved the girl forward. The young man didn't want to hit a woman. He gently pushed her aside, but Geno saw the dagger hidden in her sleeve. Ugh! As the young man turned his back, she pulled the knife and attacked. The blade glinted under the neon. Ack! She screamed and stabbed him in the right thigh. The blade sliced through his jeans, tore skin, and sank into flesh. Ah! He yelled and instinctively kicked her. She flew back, landing hard. Blood stained his jeans, and his face darkened. Seeing him wounded, the thugs regrouped, weapons raised, and charged. Geno started to move away, but then, a voice echoed in his mind. Negative emotions from Bruce Wayne +10, +10. Bruce Wayne. Geno stopped, looking back at the brawl. Bruce Wayne fighting with gangsters, seemed to be wearing makeup and contact lenses, and had no similar characteristics to the man Geno saw in the newspaper. Geno paused, hard to believe the future Dark Knight, Justice League's brains, was getting his ass kicked by a bunch of lowlifes, and he just got shanked by a hooker. Through X-ray vision, Geno could see blood gushing from the wound in Bruce's right leg. Any moment now, this guy was gonna go into shock from blood loss. Guess this Batman had a long way to go. Geno changed his mind about leaving. He even pulled out his phone to record the fight. Future Batman's most embarrassing moment. It might be worth something, of course, that was just a bonus. He was really sticking around for those sweet points from Bruce. Geno leaned against the wall, listening to the +10s ringing in his mind. Wee-oo. Sirens wailed as a police car sped down the street. In Gotham, it took a good half hour for the cops to show up. The thugs, knowing Gotham's cops were dirty, scattered. Bruce Wayne stood alone, blood on his fists. Freeze! .2 cops in dark blue uniforms drew their guns. In Gotham, the best way to handle trouble was to eliminate it. They aimed and pulled the trigger. Bang! Shell casings flew, smoke filled the air. Bruce's eyes widened. League of Assassins training kicked in. He instinctively ducked, trying to dodge the bullets. Chapter 78 Shadow Peeping Test. You are listening at novelfull.audio. A single gunshot ripped through the street, triggering instant pandemonium. People screamed, scattering in every direction. These old-school Gothamites knew how to fight to survive. Too loud, Geno muttered, and then started walking. He couldn't let Bruce die here. Simple as that. Since they met, Bruce had only provided a measly 500 negative points. This lamb still had plenty of wool to shear, and the Zibin family knew all about recycling. Geno wasn't about to let Bruce go to waste. Geno took a step. The air seemed to thicken. Ugh! Everything around him went into slow motion. Bullets that had been spinning wildly now crept through the air, leaving trails of cone-shaped airflow behind. His shoe touched the cold ground again. The purple neon light seemed to freeze in mid-air, and the spinning bullets hung suspended. Time itself seemed to have stopped. Panic-stricken people, grim-faced cops. Everything was paused, space and time were condensed, creating a surreal scene. Gino wasn't surprised. The faster you go, the slower time moves. That's Einstein's theory of relativity in action. That step he'd taken probably took less than 0.01 milliseconds by human standards. Basically, insane speed can push your actions close to light speed, stretching time and creating the illusion of stopping it. Technically, Gino wasn't stopping time. He was just moving faster than the human perception of it, achieving that time dilation effect Einstein talked about. When he sped up, everything else slowed down. Gino strolled forward, the faces around him were frozen in expressions of fear. He walked up to Bruce, noting the wound on his thigh and the grimace on his face. He glanced at the 2 bullets aimed at Bruce. If things went as planned, 1 bullet would hit Bruce in the left chest, the other in the calf of his other leg. That wasn't the outcome Gino wanted. A living Bruce was a useful Bruce. Oh, bother. Gino stepped toward the bullets. He caught the bullet aimed at Bruce's chest between his fingers. It was hot to the touch, but not hot enough to burn. Gino squeezed gently. The copper slug crumpled in his hand. He pocketed the deformed bullet. As for the other one, bullets in Bruce would net him some serious points. He returned to his original spot, looking at the frozen scene. Gino finally understood the appeal of being a speedster. With time on pause, a guy could get half the women in America pregnant. Although Gino was pessimistic about it, and that poor guy would probably be physically exhausted, he shook his head to clear the messy thoughts. He raised his right arm and snapped his fingers. Snap! The sound cut through the air, and the red light district came back to life, noise and chaos filling the streets. Bruce's mind was still replaying the gunshot. The next moment, a sharp pain shot through his right calf, as if struck by something. Bruce looked down and saw blood soaking his left leg. The jeans were scorched and giving off an acrid smell. The pain snapped him back to reality. He'd been hit. This bad news added to his already foul mood. Negative emotions from Bruce Wayne plus 20. Bruce took a deep breath. He had to stay calm. He looked around. 2 black cops were pushing through the fleeing crowd toward him, and in the corner, a tall, lanky kid in a bat mask and workout gear. He saw the kid open his palm, and a mangled bullet dropped out, landing in a puddle with a splash. The masked man looked at him, a strange glint in his eyes. Then, he vanished. Bruce blinked, wondering if he was seeing things. He refocused on why he'd come to this part of town. He wanted to witness Gotham's decline firsthand before committing himself to fighting its evils, but his first step into the city had brought him crashing down. A pair of hands steadied him. He looked up. 2 cops were helping him to his feet, escorting him toward a squad car. "All right, buddy, you're spending the night downtown." Bruce tried to resist, but he'd lost too much blood, and his body was too weak. He was shoved into the back of the cruiser and collapsed against the seat. The window rolled up as the car pulled away from the alley. Bruce turned his head, looking out the window. Under the neon lights, at the alley entrance, the kid in the bat mask reappeared as suddenly as he disappeared. He tilted his head, then held up his other hand like a gun, pointing it at his temple. Then, he was gone again, like a ripple in the air. What the hell? Bruce's breath hitched. What was that supposed to mean? His thoughts instantly went back to the past. 2 fallen figures, a gun, 2 bullets. Bruce was lost in memory. He was back in that alley again, the cold concrete forever stained with blood. He remembered everything. He remembered the movie they'd seen that night. He remembered his parents holding his hands, walking into a dark alley. He remembered the masked gunman who appeared from nowhere. He remembered the flash of orange as the gun fired. He remembered his father's roar, his mother's scream, and the sound of the pearl necklace hitting the ground. The faces and voices of his parents were still so clear. Bruce's expression darkened. The death of his parents was his trigger. "Whoever you are," Bruce growled, "I will find you." Negative emotions from Bruce Wayne plus 1000, plus 1000. P.S. The author is a liberal arts student. I used Baidu for the time dilation information. If anyone spots an error, please let me know, and I will change it. Over. Chapter 79 When Darkness is Born. You are listening at novelfull.audio. WO. The flashing red and blue lights from the patrol car roof splashed across Bruce's worried face. The police car sped along the winding mountain road, the 2 officers inside joking about hitting up their favorite brothel after their shift. Bruce's eyes hardened. he couldn't be taken back to the station. He couldn't risk his identity being revealed. Pull over. Let me out, Bruce said, his voice low and steady. A normal guy, having lost that much blood, would have been out cold. But sheer willpower, fueled by the image of the two-fingered gun gesture he'd witnessed, somehow kept him upright. The black officer in the passenger seat turned, a warning in his eyes. Hey, pal, you better stay put, but as soon as the cop's head turned, Bruce threw himself forward, grabbing the steering wheel. Bang, his hands gripped the wheel and jerked it hard. What the hell? You crazy SOB. The cops yelled, scrambling to stop him. The police car swerved violently, careening off the road like a drunk and tumbling down the embankment. Crash, the overturned cruiser finally slammed to a stop against a thick tree. Bruce kicked out the shattered window and crawled free, collapsing onto his hands and knees. The strong smell of gasoline filled his nostrils. He paused, then, ignoring his agonizing injuries, dragged himself back to the wreck and pulled the two officers out. Boom, A second explosion ripped through the air as the spilled fuel ignited, sending black smoke billowing skyward. Bruce stumbled away, every step a torment. He had to get out of there, find some way to save himself. Blood soaked through the makeshift bandage on his wound. He gasped for breath and pulled out his cell phone. Dead. The shattered screen and mangled case confirmed it was toast. His vision blurred. Click, click. He heard the sound of boots crunching on twigs. With immense effort, Bruce turned his head. There, in the darkness of the woods, bathed in moonlight, was that same strange figure. The figure stood beneath a towering locust tree, an arm extended from the shadows. The gentle light illuminated the suit and the mysterious man's right hand. He was holding a phone. Even though he couldn't make out the man's face, Bruce could sense his amusement. He toyed with the phone, his eyes fixed on Bruce. Then, like some all-powerful being, he tossed the cell phone with his gloved right hand. The brand new phone arced through the moonlight, landing in the clearing maybe 200 yards away, a beacon of hope. With that, the figure turned and disappeared into the darkness. Wait. Bruce clawed at the dirt, pushing himself up, his voice raw. He needed to know who this guy was, but the figure vanished into the night. Exhaustion washed over him again. He abandoned the chase, focusing on survival. He dragged himself forward, his limbs heavy, like someone just out of surgery. Pain and fatigue gnawed at him, but he crawled until his fingers closed around the new phone. He fumbled with it, finally hitting the speed dial for Alfred. After giving his location, the last bit of strength drained from him. His eyes rolled back, his cheek pressed against the damp earth, and he slipped back into unconsciousness. Wayne Manor, the ancient castle, built of black marble, stood silent and imposing. The iron gates kept the outside world at bay, as if holding Bruce's soul separate from everything. When Bruce woke, he was tucked under a light blanket. The familiar surroundings eased his mind. He was back in the castle. He tried to sit up. Hiss! Agonizing pain shot through his legs. He pulled back the covers. His legs were swathed in bandages, like giant rice dumplings. It hurt like hell, but he could tell he could probably walk. He hobbled to the window and yanked open the curtains, letting the soft moonlight flood the room. He stood there for a moment, then closed them again. He sat back on the bed, his mind replaying the events of the night before. Gotham was slipping into chaos faster than he could have imagined. Master Bruce. A soft knock came from the door. Alfred, dressed in his usual impeccable suit, entered carrying a tray. Your breakfast. He placed the steaming food on the table. The gray-haired old man watched Bruce silently, his eyes filled with concern, though his tone was as sharp as ever. Left femoral artery, lacerated. Right calf, bullet clean through. Frankly, sir, it's a bloody miracle you're alive. I know, Alfred, but I'm okay, Bruce said, shaking his head. He refused Alfred's help and started toward his parents' study. He needed to think, he needed a plan. He went into the study. A bust of Bruce's father dominated the spacious room. He collapsed onto the soft couch, staring at the statue, his mind racing. Gotham. The masked man. Bruce took a deep breath, fatigue etched in his blue eyes. I have unlimited resources. I'm a skilled fighter. I have the best help. He stared at the statue, a fire smoldering in his gaze. I've tried waiting. I've tried patience. But what am I supposed to do? that he seemed to be asking the statue, and himself. How can I make these criminals afraid? Silence, but the image of the masked man's two-fingered gesture flashed through his mind. A bat. Bruce murmured. My fear. He remembered falling into the Batcave as a child. Those swarms of bats had been his greatest fear ever since. A spark ignited in Bruce's eyes. If you want to make others afraid, you must become fear. He took a deep breath. An idea was forming, a plan. He rang the bell on the side table, his voice low and firm. Alfred, contact the tech department. I need them to send over some materials. I'm going to build something. Chapter 80, Discussion of Banquet Confrontation. You are listening at novelfull.audio. The next night at Elliott Manor, in a south-facing room, Keno adjusted his tie. His slightly curly blonde hair was paired with a black, slim-fitting suit, highlighting his strong build. He straightened the tie and calmly studied his reflection in the mirror. Hey, Keno, don't forget the banquet tonight. Thomas called from outside the door. I remember, Keno replied, his gaze lingering on the canvas bag in the corner. A playful glint sparkled in his eyes. I'm really looking forward to attending Gotham's high society gathering. This game of cat and mouse, Keno fastened the expensive watch on his wrist. He was ready. The young man stepped out of the room. Thomas, brown-haired and nearing middle age, loosened his tie and grinned. To be honest, you're just as handsome now as I was back in my day. Keno shrugged, having nothing to say to his shameless uncle. They walked along the second floor to the living room. Letitia, fresh from psychological treatment, lay sleeping on the sofa, a soft blanket draped over her. Nearby sat a female doctor with glasses and beautiful blonde hair. She wore a white coat, a knee-length skirt, and black stockings with black high heels, giving her a youthful and attractive appearance. Her striking blue eyes were fixed on the doll in Letitia's hand, her pretty face thoughtful. Dr. Harleen, what's the diagnosis? Thomas scratched his head as he walked between them. He glanced at the sleeping Letitia, a hint of guilt flashing in his eyes. Huh. Oh, well, her brain nerves have suffered irreversible damage. Harleen pursed her lips and smoothed the black stockings on her thighs. She slowly stood, her small nose twitching under the black-rimmed glasses. Hesitating, she whispered, honestly, a full recovery isn't very likely. She's mentally devastated, Harleen continued. Combined with the nerve compression and her environment, she's developed an escape personality. She only remembers what she wants to remember. Harleen looked at Letitia, a flicker of envy in her eyes. Nobody can escape their past, except those with mental illness. Keno silently observed the sleeping Letitia. It seems Dr. Harleen's got some skills. He took in Dr. Harleen's features. Big, bright eyes, a straight nose, and a rosy mouth. Could this woman become the infamous Harley Quinn? The thought sparked anticipation within him. If so, then that means he can get points from this. Anyway, thank you so much, Dr. Harleen. Thomas smiled, pulling bills from his wallet. He was about to hand the money to Harleen when he glanced at the clock and slapped his forehead in annoyance. Damn it, Keno, do you even have a date for tonight? Keno was taken aback, then shook his head. He'd only just arrived in Gotham and had almost no social life. Well, Thomas said, glancing at Harleen. Miss Harleen Frances Quinzel, would you like to attend the dinner party with Keno? Harleen looked at the handsome young man, then at the ink stains on her hands. A wave of insecurity washed over her. She shook her head. No, forget it. I don't think so. What a shame. Thomas winked at Keno. Looks like you're stuck with me for the banquet. Maybe next time you can find a date beforehand. Maybe. Iceberg Restaurant, this long-standing restaurant, originally founded by the Cobot family, was Gotham's oldest upscale establishment. Classical music filled the opulent dining room, a collection of expensive sports cars lined the street outside. Only the city's wealthiest and most powerful frequented this place. The hall buzzed with the laughter and chatter of the guests. The room, A Lamborghini screeched to a halt outside the restaurant. A waiting attendant quickly opened the car door for the owner. Bruce, in a sharp suit, unfolded his long legs and stepped out. "That car is awesome." The sleek sports car drew genuine admiration from the attendants. Bruce smiled. "Maybe you should look into getting one." A smile played on his lips as the passenger door opened, and two dark-haired, blue-eyed women in luxurious dresses stepped out. The scene solidified Bruce Wayne's reputation as a playboy in the eyes of the onlookers. "Sir, this way, please. Your seat is right over here." The women took Bruce's arms and led him towards the center of the hall. "Bruce," a surprised voice rang out. Bruce looked up to see a man rising from a table of guests. "Thomas." Bruce's face lit up with joy. "There are three things worth being happy about in life: in good health, a dream come true, old friends reunited." Bruce and Thomas were close friends. They grew up together until Bruce chose to travel the world and Thomas chose to become a surgeon. Thomas laughed, stepping forward to embrace Bruce. Their friendship had clearly stood the test of time. "Come with me, I want you to meet my nephew." Bruce followed Thomas to the table. "Keno Luthor, my sister's son, and one of the heirs to the famous Luthor family." Bruce eyed the smiling young man. He sat casually in his chair, one leg crossed over the other, exuding an air of ownership. Their eyes met, and in that instant, a wave of inexplicable fear washed over Bruce. The unnerving feeling made Bruce tense. He couldn't understand its source. It felt as if the young man sitting in the chair could end his life at any moment. His training in the League of Assassins had honed Bruce's sixth sense to a razor's edge, and it screamed that this young man was dangerous. Yet, by all appearances, Keno was just a young man in his early 20s. His youthful exuberance seemed harmless, so how could he inspire such dread? "Hello." Keno interrupted Bruce's thoughts. His voice broke through the silence, and his blue eyes glinted. "I'm Keno Luthor." The boy stood with a smile, extending a hand to Bruce. "Nice to meet you." Bruce paused, then reached out his own hand. Their palms met in a brief, firm clasp. The two men sat down. The atmosphere was thick with unspoken tension. Keno toyed with the silverware, studying Bruce with a smile. He took the lead, breaking the silence. "Mr. Bruce, I haven't been in Gotham long. What's your take on the city?"